everyone, welcome back to All Things Real Estate. I'm Terry LaJoy, your host with Keller Williams Coastal and Lakes and Mountains Realty. I've got my co-host over here, Sean Sandville from Oak Hill Acquisitions, and today's guest several times returning, is Paul Godbout from New American Funding. And we have an interesting topic today that I get asked about a lot, which is house hacking. So, Paul, first, tell us again who you are and what you do, and then we're going to get into house hacking and how that works.
I'm Paul Godbout with New American Funding. This is my third time on the show, the trifecta. Yeah. So hopefully people aren't getting sick of me by now. But nope. I wouldn't be surprised if you were.
It's the best show yet.
It's the best show yet.
Yeah.
Terry asked me to come on today. We're going to talk about house hacking.
Yeah.
So here we are.
So first question, what is house hacking? What does that mean?
Well, house hacking is a way to build equity and wealth through property acquisition.
Okay.
And there's different ways to do that. And you can buy multiple properties and hopefully create multiple streams of income for yourself.
Okay.
And so that's what we're here to talk about.
So when I'm meeting with people and they talk to me about house hacking, I always start with 4, 3, 2, 1 and how that works for them. And so from a lending perspective, if somebody wants to buy and they have never owned or haven't owned in the last 3 years, they still qualify as a first-time buyer, and they want to buy a multifamily and start that house hack. Explain that 4, 3, 2, 1 and what it looks like from a lending perspective and why we do it that way.
Yeah. Well, real simply, when you purchase a home and then you decide you want to buy another home, you have to improve your living situation. So improving the living situation can be the area that you're buying the home in. It can be by the number of units, because in the lending world, we assume that if you live in a 3-family, that's better than living in a 4-family. If you live in a 2-family, that's better than living in a 3 or 4, right? Et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, maybe the creme de la creme is living in a single-family home. So what we recommend is you can go out, buy a 4-unit property, own or occupy that for a year, and then if you decide, because you don't like your living situation, that you'd like to live in a bit better area, or that you'd like to, improve your quality of life because now you only have a couple neighbors instead of 3, then you can go out and maybe buy a 3-family, and then rinse and repeat, go buy a 2, and then buy the single family or the condo after that. So that's what the 4, 3, 2, 1 means.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is a great way for someone to not only build equity, they're building a passive income stream, and they're doing it all with lower cost out of pocket.
Right.
So how does that work, the lower cost out of pocket, when they're following that strategy? Because it's a strategy a lot of people can understand.
Right.
How does that work as far as the cash out of pockets? And
Well, that's a great question. So recently, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, who are the big GSAs, government-sponsored agencies, right? They came out and they changed the down payment requirement on a multifamily from 15, 20, or 25% down to 5% down. So now you can buy up to a 4-unit property with as little as 5% down. Now, there's always been a standby FHA loan, right? FHA loan, you could buy that multifamily with 3.5% down, which is still a phenomenal product with a very low PMI percentage, by the way, and better rates than conventional. So FHA is a great way to buy your first one. So basically what that means is that you don't need as many assets to go out and purchase 4 different properties. So if you look at it from just real simple terms, you can go buy 4 different properties for 5% down each plus closing costs. So call it 8% down each.
right.
So you can do the math on that versus having to pay, buy your first one 3.5% down. It used to be you have to buy your first one 3.5% down FHA.
Right.
Then your next one, you either have to refinance out of the FHA to use it again. So you have to refinance into a conventional loan if you have enough equity. Then buy your next one with FHA again, 3.5% down. And there was a lot more transactions, a lot more costs for the buyer.
Right.
Now you could buy that first one. Now the second one, just put 5% down and then continue. So it keeps a lot more cash in your pocket, makes it more accessible for the average home buyer to go out there and build wealth and do our house hacking.
Yes. And you do have to live in the house.
You do have to live in the house, yes.
Okay.
So you do have to live there. The guideline is at least a year
Okay.
that you intend to live in the property. And if you move out before that, the underwriters are going to ask you questions.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So if I bought a 4-family and then I wanted to go buy another 4-family, but it was in a better location. So could that be in the same town? Like instead of being downtown, maybe it's in a different neighborhood, or it's in a neighborhood versus like the downtown where there's more multis and now I'm more in a neighborhood. Does that qualify?
It does qualify. So if you live in a better neighborhood, and we can explain that, or if you've had a life change, so let's say you bought your initial 4-family and you were just had a girlfriend, and you weren't, just speaking from a guy's perspective, I suppose, and you just had a girlfriend and you weren't married, and now suddenly, a year later you get married and you want a little bit nicer neighborhood, or maybe you had a child and the unit you were living in your 4-family was a 1-bedroom.
Right.
This another 4-family has a beautiful owner's unit with 3 bedrooms and maybe a garage. If it's a better situation, just has to make sense for the underwriter that you're actually, and you have to make sure you're actually going to live there.
Yes, that's kind of important.
Yeah, we're not into mortgage fraud here.
No, we don't like
No, we
mortgage
don't
fraud.
like that, no.
That's all bad.
It's not good. The $1 million fine and 10 years in prison is probably not worth it.
No, it's not.
No, I think we'll pass on that. Yeah, just do it the right way.
It is steep.
Yeah, it's steep.
Yeah.
That's
A good thing, right?
Yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Deters a lot of people.
It does deter a lot of people. Yeah. Yeah. Occupancy fraud is the number one type of mortgage fraud there is.
Really?
Yeah, people lying about. Yeah, you didn't know that, right?
No.
People lying about, saying, "Hey, this is going to be my second home," and maybe it's in fact an investment property, saying they're going to live there, but they're really never going to move in. So we keep a tight eye on that because it is the number one source of fraud in the mortgage business.
Interesting.
All right. We could do a whole other topic on mortgage fraud if you want to.
I know, right?
Yeah, that's a whole thing.
That is.
It's scary.
So once somebody's in, they buy the 4-family. And if they want to go buy another one and they don't want to sell this one,
Right.
talk about the equity and the ability to use some of that equity to go into the next property. Because when somebody purchases a property, a multifamily,
Right.
they're getting income from rents, but there's also potential for increased value, creating excess equity that they can then use going forward.
Well, and we've in this market today, we don't see that equity rising as fast, I don't think, as it did back a few years ago. Well, let's say somebody bought a multifamily in 2018, let's say, and then by 2021, after COVID, or 2022, that property could have gained $200,000 or $300,000 in value. One of the strategies that I've employed with the properties that I own is we open up equity lines on our properties or on our investment properties, and you can use that equity line to use for a down payment on your next property,
Right.
which is nice. Or you can do a cash out refinance and use that money. That's limited typically to 80% of your or 75%, depending on the type of property it is, of the house's value. So sometimes that's not as easily accessible, whereas an equity line, sometimes you get to 90 or 100% of the value depending on the program and how the occupancy is. So that gives you a lot of leverage to continue to go out and buy more properties and use other people's money to make more money.
Right.
Yeah.
And
We do like that.
Yeah.
we do like that. We like that a lot.
Why use your own money, especially when you're borrowing it these days and rates are the 5s and 6s, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty cheap money.
Yeah.
Better use
It
other
is.
people's money when the stock market's making 8, 12, 20%, depending on your investments. I'm not a stock, I'm not a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Don't take my advice, but a lot of people are getting some great returns right now.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So when you get this 4-family and you live in one of the units, and I see a lot of people, whether it's a young couple or it's a single person, they're taking the smallest unit so they can rent out the bigger units.
Yeah.
All of that money that comes in pays a good chunk, if not all, of the mortgage. And so you're living there, and that's the hack, right? You're living there, but it's costing you a lot less. And then you stay there until you can get some equity out. The equity that's coming out of that, if you draw an equity line, and I think an important piece, and I want you to kind of chime in on this too, is you draw an equity line, but then you move out into another property. You've got now 4 units
All right.
paying that mortgage and the equity line back. So the money that comes out of the equity line is tax-free, that you can go use for,
Pay tax on borrowed money.
you don't pay tax on borrowed money, and somebody else is paying it back.
Right. Yeah. So now you have a couple of things on your line of questioning here. One, when we do the financing, just to let everybody know, when we do the financing, we assume that the owner, if it's owner occupied, we're assuming the owner is going to live in the biggest, nicest unit.
Oh,
So when
I did not know that.
when we're doing our qualifications, we're going to qualify on the lowest 3 units rent when you're buying. So if you're buying a 4-family, we'll qualify at 75% typically of the 3 smallest units, because we assume the owner's going to live in a nice place, right? Now, a lot of people do what you said. Most people will, especially if they're just starting out, they'll live in the smallest unit so they can maximize their rental income.
Correct.
And that's fine. So when we go to buy the next one, whatever you're claiming on your Schedule E on your tax return, we can use that net income plus add back depreciation. And the unit that you're leaving, we can now, if you can get a lease agreement or a rental agreement and the security deposit in the first month's rent, we can add that to the income also to use for the next property for qualification purposes. Plus, if you go from a 4 to a 3, then we can also use the two smallest units of the 3 family you're buying to help qualify.
Nice.
So that gives you a lot of leverage there. Now, hopefully that 4th unit tenant is now paying at least enough money to cover that equity line cost, which they should.
Right.
If you need that money, you only have to put 5% down, right? So
Right.
hopefully you have that. Hopefully you're really good with your finances, and you've saved that money anyhow. But if not, use the equity line. You can do it that way.
I love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Sean, questions?
I wish I'd known about the 432 method when I started house hacking, because I would have about 2-3 more properties right now. Not questions, more so just like, if you're young, you should be doing this.
Yes.
Like, truthfully, realistically, you should be doing it, because, I mean, my example is I was a W-2 aircraft mechanic worker making like $4,000 a month, and I was able to qualify for a single family house by the cash flow from my duplex.
Right.
It added another $2,000 a month, which one property adding about 50% of what I was making a month, that's pretty significant. And especially for younger people where things may not be as affordable, they don't have as much liquidity, it's a really good hack, right? But it's a good hack to the system where you can get into things that you normally wouldn't be able to get into.
Right.
And it's a safety net, realistically.
It is.
Let's talk about we should talk about pitfalls of owning properties.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
A little bit, let's talk about that, because it all sounds like sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah,
right?
it does.
So you own a lot of properties. So tell us a little bit about some of the challenges you've seen owning these properties.
So as far as the challenges is really for me just maintenance, right? Maintenance, finding the right people to maintain, landscapers, snow removal guys, if you don't want to do it yourself. There's times where I used to go up and shovel the driveways and do all that stuff too. But I think personally it's just maintenance. I'm very lucky and I haven't had issues with tenants yet. I have been able to do a really good job at vetting people out and making sure I've never had to evict anybody for the ones that I hold. So to me, it's really just a maintenance thing where you need to be prepared. Where last year I had
I was thinking that.
a sewer, what is it? A sewer line? Not
A sewer line backup.
I had a sewer line backup, and I had to replace the entire line from the main all the way to the house. So that was about a $12,000 bill out of nowhere.
Which is actually pretty reasonable for that.
Yeah, I know.
I had that done once. The guy charged me $25,000. So,
Holy crap.
Yeah.
I have a good contractor
Exactly.
for that.
It was a crappy situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
All
but
the way around.
it is an expense out of nowhere that you don't expect. So I think that's probably from my point of view, and you'll probably have a different perspective as well, right? But I think for me, it's just maintenance. If you take the time and you get good people in there, maybe you don't quite charge market rent, so you can have your selection of really high quality tenants. But it's just maintenance for me, because the unforeseen maintenance issues, that's what are really going to throw a wrench in your day.
Right.
And on that note, I'm going to put a little side note in here that's outside of house hacking, but a critical one for what you just said. There is on homeowner insurance, you can get public utility coverage, which covers all of the utility lines, your water, sewer, gas lines from the street in, so that, and then your regular insurance also covers the backup. So you then have coverage for that entire thing, and you're not coming out
Do
of
you have any
pocket.
idea how much extra that would cost?
I just did it for my house. It was $78.
A year?
Yeah.
A year?
Yep.
Get the coverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
That's crazy.
I was shocked.
Yeah.
Because I already had the water line coverage. That was like $8 a month for that. But I added and got coverage for everything. And if I have a backup, which hopefully I won't, but if I did, the regular insurance covers the backup, and any damage to the house, but then the utility line rider covers the lines all the way to the street.
Wow, that's huge. That's a great piece of advice.
Yes.
Anybody watching the show, if you get one thing out of this, that might be it right there. That's a great piece of advice.
Yeah.
So from my perspective, as far as pitfalls, what I see from a financing end is that people just don't, they want to buy the multifamilies. This all sounds great to them. But the big thing you have to remember that you have to run it like a business. So if you're going to do this, you need to basically, the people I see that struggle, don't do good books.
Yeah.
Don't have all their ducks in a row. Living paycheck to paycheck because they're not putting that money away, or start living on the money from the rentals instead of using it as in addition to what they're already doing. They're using it as, their own, kind of stealing from their own business, right? So make sure you keep good books. Make sure that you have at least 4 to 5 months of reserves just for standard, at least for the mortgage payment. Because like you said, you come across, if you didn't have Terry's advice, and then the sewer backs up, that might be $12,000. Or you own 4 units. Well, guess what? You have probably 4 furnaces, 4 hot water heaters. So and all of those things can go at any time. And especially some of these older multis we have in Nashua, Manchester area. I mean, we do the best we can to vet them when you buy the property, but they're not always perfect. So.
And if you live in a town that has a COC, which is Certificate of Compliance, the town comes in every so many years and inspects the property, and they'll tell you, these are the things that you need to update. And so you have to be mindful of that too, because that's a non-negotiable at that point. And to your point, if you don't have the reserves, you're coming out of pocket for that, and that could actually impact your ability to pay the mortgage.
Right. And then suddenly you're using credit cards for that. Your credit cards could be 25, 30%, unless they go down to 10%, hopefully for a year. But they could be very high, right? And then suddenly you're drowning in debt on your multi, and then you're calling Paul to refinance, and then that adds additional cost to kind of bail you out of that. So just make sure that when you're, you already know, but if homeowners or potential homeowners are watching the show, to make sure you put enough money away, or that you have enough money in reserve, so that you don't get yourself in that situation where you're upside down on maintenance, or you can't afford to fix something, and now you lose the tenant because you can't fix the furnace, and then
snowballs.
Then you're in a tough snowballs. Then you're in a tough situation. But speaking of snowballs, one of the things I do with my leases for my properties that my wife and I hold, we put that the tenants are responsible for snow removal in everybody's leases, and that way I don't have to go there and break my back shoveling. And hey, where are you? I can actually enjoy my days when it snows. I can maybe go to Crotchet Mountain, or go to a local ski area and
do something fun.
Have a fun day. Right? Instead of having to be out there shoveling snow for all my properties.
Exactly.
I'd be coming here in a wheelchair if I was doing all that.
Thankfully, I should look into doing that. I've hired a plow guy the past 2-3 years now, and he's pretty reasonable. So
you're nicer to your tenants than I am.
I really am. I really am. I mean, I need to be a bit more cutthroat, I think, because there's a lot of stuff they should just take care of. But
I would agree.
Yeah, but you have good tenants too.
Yeah, that's true.
They're paying on time. They don't hassle you. There's a lot to be said for that.
One of my downstairs tenants is paying far above market rent, so I treat them like gold.
Yeah, well, of course you do. You're one of your best clients. They're an A+.
Yeah.
I would just dovetailing off that. I started buying properties and managing them myself. Back. It's been a long time. But anyhow, when I first did it, I wanted to jump off a bridge or throw somebody off a bridge. It drove me crazy to manage the tenants.
Yeah.
So the best thing I ever did in my house hacking was hire a management company.
Yeah.
Management companies are going to keep 10 to 12% of the gross rents, but they handle collecting the rents, taking care of the maintenance items. If somebody doesn't pay and you have to evicting the tenants. They do everything. Yeah. It's amazing. It was a life-changing experience for me. Otherwise, I would have sold all my properties a long time ago. So one of my pieces of advice is, once you have a couple properties, I'd say find yourself a reputable management company, let them deal all the headaches so you can use that as your passive income, and then you can go live your life. That's what I would do.
Yeah.
So when you have a management company, who handles the reserves? Do they, or are you still responsible for having your reserve account?
I'm still responsible for the reserve account.
Okay.
Or you are. So I suppose you could probably negotiate with your management company if you really trusted them, and then have them hold money in reserves for you if you were worried about it. But I'd rather make the interest on them.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So another house hack, if you can use rehab loans for house hacking too.
Oh. Do tell.
Yeah. So another way you can do house hacking is that, when you go to buy a fixer-upper, and Terry seems to come across a plethora of these, you can use a rehab loan. So Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and FHA all have awesome rehab loans. So if you're out there trying to find a house and you can't find one that fits your price range, well, a great way would be to go out and buy a house that needs some work. We can finance the work on Fannie Mae programs up to 90% of the future value. On FHA, they'll finance with 110% of the future value.
Oh, wow.
We can
That's
actually do
scary.
those up to 4 units also.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
4 units.
So you can use up to 4 units on the rehab programs.
Oh.
So use that. So if you have a fixer-upper multi, you can get in there cheap or buy it at a reasonable cost.
Yes.
I don't like to say cheap.
Yeah.
You can use
There's no
rehab.
such thing as cheap right now in
No,
real
no,
estate.
no. Even if it's a dump, it's still expensive.
Yeah.
But you could use that to go and house hack that way. Get in there, use other people's money again to fix it up. Once it's done, have a new appraisal done, or live there for a year. And then if you decide you want to sell it, you can build some sweat equity with other people's money. It's another great way to house hack.
So talk about the rehab loan, because we talk about 203Ks all the time,
Right.
and there's 2 different ones. So can you talk about the 2 different the 203K rehab loans that are what you can do and how much you're allowed to do?
Right. So there's the full 203K loan, which is pretty much for anything, but that requires full inspections. You need to have a FHA consultant as part of the transaction. And that'll allow you to go in there and do everything from, taking down walls, kitchens, baths, pretty much anything on the inside of the property, roofs, reconstruction, right? Doesn't include, I don't believe it includes luxury items like pools. Can't do stuff like that.
And you can't do an addition with it
Yeah,
either. I don't
additions,
think.
no, but
you can
do-
fix an addition, but
if it's already existing. But that allows you to do everything. And then there's also this one called the limited 203K loan, which you don't need to have as much. It's a lot less paperwork intensive, but you can only go up to it's like all non-structural, and I believe up to $35,000 in repairs.
right.
So,
Cool.
but going up to 110% of the future value is pretty neat.
Yeah.
So that's the neat thing about the FHA. If you go with the conventional loans, you can do anything you want with those loans. So
Okay.
as long as it adds to the value and you're within your 90% of the future value guideline, you can do whatever you want.
And how much time do you have on the FHA 203K to do the work and get it refinanced? And we're almost out of time, but I want to address that question too, because there's a time limit on it.
Yeah, you know what? I'd have to look it up, Terry. I can't remember if it's 6 months or 270 days. I don't know if it's 9 months or 6 months.
I think it's 6.
It's been a while. It's probably 6.
I think it's 6,
But
unless it's changed,
But with
which is
contractors
possible.
being the way they are, I have to look it up. So I'll look it up. I guess I'll let you know.
Okay.
Oh, and so you can do a rehab loan conventional, not
Yeah.
just FHA?
Yeah. That's the home style renovation loan through Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac.
Did not know that was a thing. What's the down payment you have to put on that?
It's 5%.
What?
Yeah, so you could buy it 5% down, do the renovation loan up to 90% of the future value.
Yeah. But the FHA is what gets you to the 110% of
Right,
future value.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
That's
basically,
not a bad deal at all.
It's a
No,
great deal.
it's
So
a
we're
great
gonna
deal.
we're gonna appraise it. So basically, you're gonna put together the plans, the specs, the material list. We're gonna find out who the contractors are. Now in New Hampshire, you don't have to have a license to be a contractor. So we're gonna look for references
Yeah.
of the work you've done. Make sure you do have insurance, of course. So that's how we're gonna get those contractors approved. Take all that information, and we're going to give all that information to the appraiser, and they're going to appraise it as to what it's going to be worth after all the stuff is complete, and that's what we're going to use for the value.
Oh, that's sick. So, like during COVID times when things were skyrocketing through the roof, even if you were catching the tail end, you could still get the after repair value of today.
Right. Well, basically within the last 6 months, because appraisers go back usually their guidelines
Yeah,
about 6
6
months
months.
of the previous sales,
Okay.
right, for their future calculation.
And the contractors, they don't have to be, I've heard like they have to be like government certified contract. Is that a thing? No?
No,
Okay.
you have to be government certified.
You just have to have references or have a
'cause in New
license.
Hampshire, you don't have to have a business license to be a contractor, so we're just going to get 3 references.
Okay. And what are those references entail? Just like prior jobs they've
prior jobs
completed?
they've done, yeah. And call the previous homeowner and make sure they did a good job and they weren't a scam artist.
I hate to say it, but I might be going back to conventional stuff.
Yeah, it's a great program. It is a bit, just like any other rehab loan, it's pretty paperwork intensive.
Intensive, yeah, but
as long as we can cross our T's and dot our I's, we're going to be in good shape.
And once you understand the paperwork, it's not that bad.
No.
And you can
Do it
do
a few
that same
times.
process of like 4, 3, 2 with
Yeah,
that way.
you could. And once we have the contractors approved, then they'll approve with our firm going forward. So we have a list of approved contractors if you don't have one. But it's not that hard to get contractors approved.
Yeah. Huh. Well.
Yeah, we call it the rehab hack.
Yeah, I just figured out. I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, at the end of the year, might be a way to start lining up a bunch more properties.
There you go.
Doing it that way.
There you go.
That actually makes a lot of sense. I always knew about the 203K loans and stuff like that, but wasn't aware of like the specifics of them.
But it has a 203K loan has a negative connotation, right? Every time I don't know if you've heard that.
Yeah.
Every time you hear it, the realtors say what? 203K loan? No way, right?
Yeah, they
I
don't
love
accept
them.
the offer
Okay, well,
or something like that.
maybe you do. But if you're the listing agent and somebody comes with a 203K loan offer or a cash offer, what are you going to take?
Well, you're going to take the cash offer.
Right.
But
Depending on price.
Depending
on price.
Suppose, yeah.
it's all
timeline.
the terms,
Yeah,
the
all
timeline,
the time.
because it's definitely going to be longer. But I love working with buyers and putting them into a 203K.
Right.
So, and we're coming into a market where that's going to be more acceptable too. But we are running out of time, so I'm going to wrap us up. And Paul, I think we have you scheduled to come back again. And
Quattro.
yes, we're going to have you back again. And thank you so much for today. A lot of great information.
Thanks for your time, team.
As always.
Thank you.
And
I need to go back and brush up my FHA 203K guideline now.
there you go.
It's been a while since we've written them because the market's been so crazy.
It is.
Yeah.
It has. But that's going to do it for us today. We'll see you back next week.